Have you ever wondered about the complex history of Bolivia? Located in the heart of South America, this country has a history filled with political upheavals and transitions since it gained independence in 1825. Named after the revolutionary leader Simon Bolivar, Bolivia has been a stage where political change is the only constant, from its early years of frequent coups and civil wars to the more recent wave of social and political reforms. In the past 2 decades, Bolivia's economy has seen remarkable shifts, adopting a resource nationalist approach under the leadership of Evo Morales and the Movement for Socialism Party. This approach led to significant poverty reduction and social development, but also increased the country's vulnerability to global economic conditions. So fasten your seatbelts as we embark on a journey through Bolivia's fascinating history, exploring its political turmoil, economic shifts, and the challenges it faces in its quest for stability and prosperity. Bolivia, named after the revolutionary leader Simon Bolivar, achieved independence from Spanish colonial rule in 1825. The birth of this nation was not a simple process. It was a struggle marked by pain, resistance, and the indomitable will of people yearning for freedom. Imagine the Bolivia of the early 19th century, a region under the firm grip of Spanish colonial rule. The indigenous population was subjugated, their voices silenced, their rights trampled. Yet in this landscape of despair, the seeds of rebellion were sown. The spirit of freedom was ignited, and it was a flame that would not be extinguished. Enter Simon Bolivar, a visionary leader and a beacon of hope. Bolivar was not just a man, but an idea, a symbol of liberation. He led the charge against the Spanish colonial forces, igniting the spark of revolution. His leadership was instrumental in the series of battles that would ultimately lead to Bolivia's independence. But the fight for freedom was far from over. After gaining independence, Bolivia faced the daunting task of building a nation. The early years of Bolivia were turbulent, marked by internal conflicts and the struggle to establish a stable government. The nation had to navigate through the complex process of creating a constitution, establishing political institutions, and defining its national identity. These formative years were challenging but also crucial in shaping the nation's future. They laid the foundations for a democratic system, but also set the stage for a history fraught with coups and political instability. Bolivia, like many young nations, had to grapple with the complex dynamics of power, governance, and societal change. The birth of Bolivia was not just the creation of a new nation, but the start of a journey filled with trials and triumphs, with moments of despair and hope. It was a journey that would test the resilience of its people and their commitment to the ideals of freedom and democracy. The birth of Bolivia set the stage for a series of political upheavals and transitions that would characterize its history. This young nation, born out of a fierce struggle for independence, would continue to navigate the tumultuous waters of political change in the years to come. From the 19th to the early 20th centuries, Bolivia was a nation marked by frequent coups and civil wars. This landlocked South American nation, named in honor of its revolutionary leader Simon Bolivar, found itself in a seemingly unending cycle of political upheaval shortly after gaining its independence from Spanish colonial rule in 1825. The turbulent period was characterized by a series of military strongmen and political instability. Power was often seized rather than transferred, with the reins of leadership changing hands as a result of forceful coups rather than democratic elections. This gave rise to an environment of uncertainty and tension, as each new regime sought to consolidate its power and stamp out opposition. The constant political shifts were not without their share of conflict. Civil wars erupted periodically, further destabilizing the country and leading to widespread suffering and loss. These wars were often fueled by deep-seated economic and social inequalities, with different factions vying for control of the nation's resources and direction. Interestingly, this period of turmoil was not entirely without progress. Some leaders, despite their undemocratic rise to power, sought to modernize the country and improve the living conditions of its citizens. Infrastructure was developed and attempts were made to diversify the economy and reduce dependence on a few key industries. However, these efforts were often undercut by the instability and uncertainty that characterized the period. As the 20th century dawned, Bolivia found itself at a crossroads. The frequent coups and civil wars had left a deep imprint on the nation's psyche, shaping its political landscape and setting the stage for the major social and political changes that were to come. In the midst of this chaos and conflict, seeds of reform were being sown. These would sprout in the mid-20th century, leading to a period of significant social and political transformation. This tumultuous period in Bolivia's history laid the groundwork for major social and political reform. In the 1950s and 1960s, Bolivia underwent a period of significant social and political change. This transformative era was marked by a series of bold reforms that aimed to reshape the nation's socio-economic landscape. One of the most striking changes was the nationalization of the tin mining industry. Previously under the control of foreign corporations, the mines became national assets, their profits funneling directly into Bolivia's economy. This shift not only bolstered the country's treasury but also signaled a move towards greater self-determination and economic independence. Alongside this, agrarian reforms were implemented, redistributing land from large landholders to small farmers and indigenous communities. This was a significant step towards addressing centuries-old inequalities and empowering Bolivia's rural population. It was a move that echoed the sentiments of social justice and fairness, creating opportunities for those who had been marginalized and ignored. In the political arena, leftist movements began to emerge, challenging the status quo and calling for a more equitable society. These movements championed the rights of workers, the poor, and the indigenous populations, pushing for social and economic equality. They played a critical role in shaping Bolivia's political discourse, bringing issues of social justice and equity to the forefront. However, as is often the case with periods of significant change, these reforms were not without controversy. Conservative elements within the country resisted these shifts. They saw the nationalization of industries and the redistribution of land as threats to their wealth and status. These tensions often led to conflicts, creating a complex and volatile political landscape. While these reforms were progressive and aimed to create a more equitable society, they also highlighted the deep-seated divisions within the country. These divisions, rooted in economic disparities and differing political ideologies, continue to shape Bolivia's social and political landscape today. These reforms, while progressive, often led to conflicts with the more conservative elements within the country. Over the past 2 decades, Bolivia's economy experienced notable shifts. The landlocked nation found itself on a new economic trajectory under the leadership of Evo Morales and his Movement for Socialism, or MS Party. A key feature of this shift was the adoption of a resource nationalist approach, which saw Bolivia taking control of its own natural gas and mineral resources. This was not just a matter of national pride or sovereignty. It was a strategic decision aimed at harnessing the country's wealth for the benefit of its people. The government used the revenues from these nationalized industries to fund social programs and spur infrastructure development. The results were significant. Poverty and inequality, long-standing issues in Bolivian society, saw a marked reduction. But every silver lining has a cloud. This economic model, heavily dependent on the export of natural resources, had its drawbacks. Bolivia became susceptible to fluctuations in commodity prices on the global market. When prices were high, the country prospered, but when they fell, so did Bolivia's fortunes. Moreover, questions arose about the sustainability of this approach. Critics pointed out that relying on resource extraction for economic growth could have serious environmental repercussions. They also questioned whether Bolivia could continue to fund its social programs and infrastructure projects if commodity prices fell or if resources ran out. The political instability following Evo Morales' resignation in 2019 added to these economic challenges. The new government, led by President Luis Arce, also from the MAS party, has been trying to diversify the economy and attract foreign investment. But the COVID-19 pandemic has added a new layer of complexity to these efforts. While Bolivia's resource nationalist approach led to economic growth and social development, it also made the nation vulnerable to global economic conditions. The future of Bolivia's economy will depend on its ability to navigate these challenges, continue to diversify its economic model, and maintain a balance between resource exploitation and environmental sustainability. Bolivia's economic history serves as a compelling reminder of the double-edged sword of resource nationalism. In 2019, Evo Morales resigned amid allegations of election irregularities, leading to political instability and a change in government. The helm of the nation was then taken by President Luis Arce, a member of the same Movement for Socialism party. Since then, Arce has been steering Bolivia through uncharted waters, grappling with the global menace that is the COVID-19 pandemic. This crisis has added an additional layer of complexity to Bolivia's ongoing quest for economic diversification and stability. The pandemic has not only strained Bolivia's healthcare system, but also plunged the country further into economic uncertainty. Yet, amidst these challenges, Bolivia continues to exhibit resilience and an unwavering spirit. The nation is striving to attract foreign investment, diversify its economy, and reduce its dependence on natural resources. Despite the road ahead being fraught with obstacles, Bolivia is determined to write a new chapter in its history. Bolivia's future will depend on its ability to navigate these challenges and continue to evolve economically and politically.